Hello and welcome to Tom's Comic Curios. Today on the show, I'm going to show you, well, before I get to that actually, this is the second video that I'm uploading today. This is a bonus video. It's going to be a shorter one. But if you haven't done so, I'd love you to watch my Dimension Z video, which I just posted before this, because that video is more interesting than this one. That video is on a really great comic book. So don't miss that video. Make sure you watch that one. But if you still want more, then feel free to watch this video as well. So far I've shown you some great comics from the 1986 black and white comic book explosion. The time when almost anybody could get into the comics market and be successful, at least for a little while. So we had Boris the Bear, we have Dimension Z, and we had Laugh-In Gas. And they're all great titles, you know, really good comics. So you might be saying to yourself, hey Tom, it looks like all these comics were great during this time, but you said that some comics were of lesser quality and they were flooding the market with these things, and so in 1987 there was an implosion and people stopped buying the black and whites. Well, let me show you the other side of the coin here. Today we're going to look at a comic that is not quite as good from 1986, which is what all these comics have been from so far that I've shown. This one's more amateur. So this is the kind of thing that people were complaining about them flooding the market with. It's called Ground Zero. It's from Alternate Concepts Incorporated. I don't know if they ever published anything else besides this. It's Volume 1, Issue 1. It was supposed to be bi-monthly, but I doubt there was a second issue. If there was, I don't know about it. And I want to say that even though this comic is not as, to say the least, not as polished as the other comics that I've shown, I still like comics like this because they're charming. They're charming in their own way. Because, you know, somebody put this together, some people put this together, and they tried their best, you know, and they might not have been ready, you know, for the comics market, but they tried, and I have this because I like it. I like it anyway. It doesn't have like an involving story like the other comics do. It doesn't have the great artwork, but it's just charming. And look, there's a face up there too, which is really interesting. So what's even more interesting to me about this is that it is a part fanzine and part comic book. So in this issue, you get radical changes in line for Byrne's Superman, the origin of Meteor Man, Doctor Who, and a less publicized comic anniversary. So we're going to take a look at this pretty neat, you know, probably pretty rare issue of Ground Zero. And it's on very cheap newsprint too, which I love that. Absolutely love that. Because I'm sure they didn't have a lot of money to put this together. So, you know, it's a labor of love. And you gotta like that, you know? You gotta like that. So, put my reading glasses on because this typeset, it's from like an old typewriter they used to type, you know, all these columns in this comic, which I love that too. But it's called the concept column, and it just lays out what they want to do with the comic book. So it says, from the thought of a comic club newsletter and dabblings into small press to survival wargaming and the creation of a self-contained universe, Alternate Concepts Incorporated was born. So that's how they started their company. Driving home from one of our many jaunts to various comic conventions out of Grand Rapids, Steve Allen and I, and I'm sure they don't mean Steve Allen, the famous comedian-songwriter that wore glasses, you know, different Steve Allen, and I were discussing the fallbacks to reorganizing yet another comic collectors club and strategies for enticing comic readers. Oh, there's a lot of spelling errors in this too, I've noticed. For enticing comic readers to meet regularly. Steve and I met through one of his first attempts. Read his article on Comic Anniversary for his story. I don't think I'm going to read this whole thing because it goes on for quite a while. It's signed by Dean M. Watts. But when I tell you something, though. When I get a comic book, I read it from cover to cover. I read everything. I read the editorials. I read the letters pages, because I love reading. Absolutely love reading. And I know from other comic channels I've watched, I've heard people sometimes complain about too much text in comic books. Like, oh, I don't want to read all that. I was going to read that. I'm the complete opposite. I want text in my comic books. I don't just want pictures. Pictures are great, but I just love to read. I love to get involved in a good story and have lots of dialogue and everything. Not that the stories in this one are great or anything, but still, I want to know, how they came up with this, what it's about. When I buy something, I want to enjoy it fully, enjoy the whole thing. And I love having a lot of text like this. So, the Steve Allen guy, who we don't know, wrote the first article in here, which is on John Byrne. And it's like the new powers of Superman. Okay, so at this time, John Byrne had written a Superman miniseries or something called The Man of Steel. And he introduced new... again, I'm not into superheroes, but, I know some things about superheroes, so I pick it up from these comic books. But he introduced things to the character, and Superman's cool. He's a cool guy. I always thought he was a cool guy, even though I don't read his comics. But anyway, John Byrne, I keep getting sidetracked. John Byrne introduced, what do I say? Concepts, twists to the Superman saga that were different than what was before. Some people liked that, some people didn't like that because he was changing things around, but it was tremendously successful, though. I mean, it sold a lot. And so this essay is basically breaking that down, like the pros and cons, and what this writer, the Steve Allen guy, thinks about it. It's a long essay, as you can see, a fairly long essay. So that's what that's about. The next article is called Comic Anniversary. So this is the fanzine part, as you can see. All typeset. And this is also written by the Steve Allen dude. And what is the Comic Anniversary that he said is less publicized? I just don't remember. Well, you know what? There's a lot of text there, and I don't remember what it is, even though I've read it. So, I guess you'll have to look for a copy of this if you want to know. Okay, so then we have our first comic story in this comic called Thine is the Kingdom, Part 1. And it's about Meteor Man. See, there's the artwork. And stories by Dean Watts. Art is by John Lauk. And he's also a co-plotter. So I read this through again before I made this video because I couldn't remember a thing about it. And what it is this guy is in a meteor explosion, and he gets powers from the meteor explosion. Someone leaves a bunch of comic books on his table in the hospital. There's a nurse there. He's reminiscing about his past. And he reads the comic books, and he realizes that he's like the guys in the comic books. He's getting these powers. And I think he's like working out or something here. I don't know. He looks like Rambo up there. But that was the mid-'80s. It was definitely a time for that look. It's a very 80s looking comic book. So you can see the art. Like I say, it's an amateur comic fanzine, so. And then some guy gives him a suit, because he's got to have a suit, right? Because he's a superhero. And then he learns how to fly. And really, it's a lot like every other superhero story, right? I mean, except it's not on a professional level. So, I mean, that's why I couldn't remember anything about it, because it was pretty generic, right? And done seriously, like it's not tongue in cheek. It's just a serious, attempt at a superhero. So obviously, the people that wrote this were big fans of superhero comics. And they wanted to create their own hero, Meteor Man, and this was their attempt at it. So it's a charming attempt. So even if you're not into superheroes, you might say, "Oh, that's really interesting because it's weird, and it's obscure." That's how I look at it, anyway. Then we have an article on Doctor Who, which I've never been into. It's by Chris Bailey. I've never watched Doctor Who. I've never really been interested in it. But if you're interested in it, there's an article about it there. It's going to analyze maybe the different doctors and things, if I remember correctly. And then there's a comic called Slippery Bob, which it's a little hard to figure out what's going on with this artwork. I read over a couple of times before I made this video, and it seems like it's just about censorship. These guys are going into this guy's comic shop, and they're saying, "We're going to shut you down." There's some wrestler guy. I'm not sure if they don't like wrestlers, or if they're in league with wrestlers. I don't really know. But they throw people out, and then they torch the store, and they leave. And then the comic shop owner at the end is like, he wishes he had insurance for the store. So I think it's supposed to be funny, but I know that there was a lot of concern about censorship back in the 80s, from the comic book industry, and a lot of comics did things about that subject, or talked about that subject. So I don't know, like, maybe it's supposed to be like comedic and serious at the same time, but there's not really a lot to it, to be honest. It's just one page. And then we have The Many Loves of Cell? Is that? The Many Loves of Cell the Barbarian, a brief interlude by Dean M. Watts. So actually, yeah, I think I'm going to read this story to you. We're getting near the end of the comic. Because I seem to remember that this was kind of entertaining in a funny way. It's 2 pages long. So I'll read this to you. Dean M. Watts is the guy that wrote the editorial, so he seems to be like the publisher or something, or the guy that created this Ground Zero. So he's got this short story here about this barbarian. So let's read this together. Yeah, yay, or like talking like a barbarian. So it's like yeah, or however a barbarian says that, right? It means nothing to one such as I, the endless wandering that seems to make up each fitful day. The cold, star-blind nights are to be spent alone tending to every sort of wound inflicted upon my person by treacherous knaves that seek to take from me mine glory. Thou, which art meaningful to me, should know of mine anguish and turmoil in the searching for my own true peace of mind in a land made up on the carnage of death, with the spirit of an infinite amount of screaming souls, screaming for the bloodlust that claimed their very existences. Why is it then that I, no more than a speck of sand blown from the tight grasp of an uncaring fickle god upon some mountain, even try to forge out an existence that will take a lifetime to achieve, a moment to enjoy, and a second to forget? Such is my curse. Wow. Okay. It seemed to take onto a lifetime to the outstretch of hellfire desert that I chose to trek through. The soles of my feet seemed to reflect the inner spirit of my being, burned through, dried up, and cracking with aridness. I shaded my eyes as so to gaze forward at the blur before me as it came closer into my vision. From within a rich cloud of powdery sand there stepped out a majestic-looking horse, pawing to the ground with defiance and issuing out a rude snarl at my well-baked being. My well-baked being, wow. This writing, I don't know, it's a little overwritten, perhaps, I don't know. But he's trying hard, so, okay. But as I sat eyes upon the rider of said horse, it was then when I forgot momentarily of my sufferings. I don't know if this is poetic or just overwritten. I'm not really sure. You can leave a comment and tell me what you think about it. I'm starting to get a feeling about this that it might be written by a teenager or something. And if so, then that explains, I mean, it's an amateur effort. So we don't want to criticize, too much, because this is maybe some teenagers, we don't know, that put this together and, did their best to enter the comic market at a time when they were able to do that. But let's keep reading. Okay. She seemed to be riding from within the horse itself. Oh, sorry. That would be weird, riding in the horse. Okay. She seemed to be rising from within the horse itself. Not another being along with the animal, but a cheery addition somehow fused to its frame. Her long blonde hair rolled over her shoulders with the wind, and her slender neck craned back as she looked down at me in puzzlement. Her face carried no smile, but to me even a hateful smile, or a hateful snarl, would have been like a god's blessing. My brute form pushed off the effects from the unrelenting sun, and I stood up loftily in great pride and admiration as to her beauty. Her expression was empty, uncertain, as she looked me up and down once. Her eyebrow cocked up crookedly when our eyes met, and she shook off my gaze even as it mesmerized her. She reached behind her, She reached behind her scantily clad body and pulled out a water pouch from her saddlebag. If this gets too steamy, I'll stop reading it. But anyway, for now, we'll keep going. From her saddlebag, throwing it at my feet. I continued to stare up at her in a worshipping type of awe. After a moment, she sighed deeply. This is what she said. Are you just going to start stupid? Okay, that's what it says. No, it actually says, okay. Are you just going to start stupidly at me as you die of thirst? I thought it said stare, but it says start. That could be a typo. I don't know. And let my water evaporate upon the harsh wastelands, barbarian? As she spoke, a mist seemed to fall over me, a silvery glitter to settle into my wounds and scars and heal them. Her voice brought to me a much renewed energy, a freshness of spirit, even a reason to live. I could have felt no higher if I had been standing upon the tallest peak of the highest mountain. I could have felt no mightier if I had conquered every living being on the planet. I could have felt no happier if I had been personal friends with the gods. She filled me with hope. So he feels all that from just seeing this woman on a horse. And she just spoke to him once, and he feels all that. Okay? Just want to point that out. Come now, are you going to drink or stand there until you turn into salt? She spoke with authority at me, yet I could sense in her speech a certain hinting of regard. She took on a face of annoyedness to cover up any more feelings she might reveal to me, and crossed her graceful arms about her slender waist. It was as if she had put upon me a curse, but even if so, I minded not at all. I would have gladly pulled my sword from its resting place upon my thigh, and run myself through if she just would have commanded me so. Oh, man. There was nothing I wouldn't have done to please her. I found it in me to smile up at her. She looked to her side and stared down to sigh again, and I felt she had much the same sentiment for me as I did for her. I don't know how he gets that idea, but okay, her side view was silhouetted by the noonday sun, and its outline fell upon my haphazard face to carve into my deepest memory. Her softly sloping nose, the slightest glint of blueness from off her eye, the glistening mold of her lips, pressed together in a sincere pout, the slightest quiver of her chin. I could do nothing else but to stare at her statuesque beauty. I yearned to tell her of my undying devotion to her, to let her be aware of my feelings, as to her presence before me. I wished to tell her of my dreams as I tossed about and looked upon her very face, even before I had witnessed it, to let her know that she was the one that I always had a yearning for. How could that be, that he always had a yearning for her when he just met her? So how could that possibly be? Okay. I wanted to beg of her to allow onto me the great honor of just walking before her, if but to throw crushed flower petals for her elegant feet to trod on. I wished to let her know I ached to be hers forever, to stop time itself with our love. He just met this girl. She daintily swung from her horse and stepped up before me. Though I stood nearly a foot above her, I was like a little child admiring a caring mother. Our eyes met again, hers squinting against the harsh elements of nature, mine welling up with tears of joy. Her gaze reflected doubt, as if trying to size me up to those she had met before. I would have blamed no one for acting such as I did, for hers is a beauty born of independence, though I would have killed the one vying for her attention. Well, if you have no need of drink, I shall be on my way. Wow, all that happened in like a space of a moment. He thought all of that before she said something again. And it seems like she's just sitting there. He's imagining this whole thing. That's what it seems like, right? And it seems like she's just sitting there like, dude, are you going to have some water or not? Or are you just going to keep staring at me? And he's just imagining this entire romance that he's having with this girl. Upon saying this, she bounced to her knees and retrieved the water pouch that still lay at my feet and turned to her horse. With a movement such as the goddess of love might have been well to copy, she swung onto her horse and pulled tightly up on its reins. The mount shot its front legs into the air and clawed at the waves of heat rising from the sands, coming down hard to stir up a cloud of fine dust. Her flowing hair bounced beautifully across her face as her hand went up in a gesture of retreat. I would suggest, barbarian, that you spend less time out in this hot sun. I think she's giving him good advice there. It seems to affect your mind. She turned her horse from me, gently nudging its sides with sculpted feet. It galloped away. The sun's great presence once more slashed my memory back. With a sigh of contentment, I continued my endless trek, now much more happy for seeing one of my dreams come true. Oh, at the very end of it, he wrote, for Gina. So, I'm getting the feeling, you write your comments what you think about this, but I'm getting the feeling that he wrote this for like a girl in his school or something, if he's a teenager. I don't even know if he is, right? I'm just assuming, the way that was written, that he's infatuated with somebody, maybe, and he wrote that for her. Or maybe she was his girlfriend. Maybe this girl, Gina, was Dean Watt's girlfriend, and he wrote this for her. And maybe he's just a really romantic guy, you know? And I don't know if this is an unrequited love that he wrote this for, or if he's just trying to be really romantic with his girlfriend, or with his unrequited love. I don't know. But I felt that was quite a story. Like, just, yeah. It's like, I don't know. It's just, the barbarian has met that girl. And you saw his reaction. There's nothing else I can say about it. There's nothing else I can say about that. You can write your comments. I'm curious to hear what everybody says. But that was fascinating to me. Okay. And then we have ads. So these were other publications that Alternate Concepts was hoping to come out with. I can see this better without. So they wanted to come out with a Ground Zero 2, all right, of course. They wanted to come out with something called Violet Sting, I think that is, and something called, I have to see again here. It's hard to read this. Privately unauthorized knockout entertainment unit. No, enforcement unit. otherwise known as Puke Unit. Oh my, oh my. That's funny. That is just funny. They wanted to come up with a comic called Puke Unit. Okay, and then we have the letters page, which there are no letters, but this is what it says. See, this is why... See, I'm not trying to make fun of this. I feel like it's just... It's doing that itself, and I'm not trying to be mean, or I don't want to be mean to the creators of this or anything, but it's funny. It's just, it might be unintentionally funny, but it's just funny, and it's charming at the same time, and that's why I wanted to show this to you, because as I said, I like things that are curious like this. If I don't like a comic book, if I just think, I didn't like that at all, that wasn't worth anything to me, I'll just throw it out. Or I'll give it away. I'll put it on a free library. We have free libraries around here. And I'll just give it to the free library so somebody else can read it, can have it. But I keep the stuff I like. So even though, we're having fun with this and everything, I like this comic. So if the creators, this is 1986, but if the creators stumble upon this video, know that I enjoy this. I am enjoying this. And you made a charming effort here. Okay, so letters page. Welcome to the letters page. Pinned to this page will include the hopeful vast quantities of letters we can only hope to receive. A possible 1 or 2, maybe 3. I won't beg or plead for such. No way could I put together an honest proposition and bribe just to receive such letters. Oh God, please write us. Tell me anything. Tell me how you would have bought this book if I would have spaced above for this leading paragraph. Tell me how you would have bought this book if I would have spaced above for this leading paragraph. I don't know what that means. Tell me that my art reminds you of the last mess you made in your Pampers. See, and they're even saying our art isn't the greatest here. We know that, but we just want to have letters. So at least they're understanding, Just don't tell me you think this will be the next Teenage Mutant investment. Because everybody wanted to be the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at that time. They wanted to be, the big seller, big success story. If we hope to live in reality and sanity, it sounds almost like he's saying that he thinks some people might think that. However... But he could be just kidding. We only initially printed 3,000 copies to fill all orders we obtained from the distributors listed in the column of the front cover, which only means that there is plenty of room for improvements, and barely enough room for paying off the printer, which again leads me to believe that this world is filled with talent further above our own, who are unfortunate in knowledge needed to publish. That is a very weird sentence, too. Who are unfortunate in knowledge needed to publish. He just means, I think that there are a lot of people that don't know how to publish, but they're more talented than we are. I think that's what he's saying. So send a self-addressed envelope to us for our terms and directions of submission. Please don't, I repeat, don't send submissions before terms. This place is already filled to the ceiling with paperwork and boxes of drawings. We need every form of talent with the exceptions of colorist. How can you color a black and white publication? And letterer. Here's a quick goodbye for now and the return of a hopeful hello tomorrow. Tomorrow. Yeah, and it's spelled like tomorrow, not tomorrow. John Lauk, publisher. So John Lauk is the publisher. And then he shows you some concepts for their comic club, the original Meteor Man, Ground Zero. And then we have, on the back cover, we have this incredible thing here. We have some characters that I believe were intended for the Puke Unit comic book. Puke Man and Spike. So let's read about them before we sign this off. So Spike, nickname Spike. Okay. Spike, nickname Spike. Okay. Real name, Alan S. Franklin. Oh, so his nickname is just Spike. Okay, that makes sense. At first I thought he was saying his name's Spike and his nickname was Spike, but he just meant that Spike is his nickname. Okay. Occupation, manager and co-owner of Speedy Appliance Repair. Martial status, single. Group identity, unit puke. I think you'd come up with a better name for like a fighting team than puke. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Operation base, home and garage. First appearance, Unit 1 tabloid comic, July 1985. So I guess they did publish something else before this. It's probably extremely hard to find. Height, 6'4", weight 170 pounds, age 26, sex male. History, born with and raised up from comics. Alan has always fantasized of being of superhero nature. He lives in a small 3-room apartment with Puke Man. Puke Man. Henry Mayos, a longtime friend and collector. The two organize an unknown legal group, themselves only, of crime-fighting costume vigilantes to combat the corrupt society they live in. Weapons, 16-pronged steel spikes used as throwing weapons, hand-strapped claws for close-hand combat, infrared goggles for night vision. You see, here's the thing, like, if you call it the Puke Unit, and you're calling one of the superheroes Puke Man, you think this was a comedy. Like, you think this was a humor comic. But all of that sounds like it's serious. So that's what really confuses me about this. So let's read Puke Man. Nickname Puke Man. Real name Henry P. Mayos. Occupation plumber. Like Mario. Martial status single. Group identity unit puke. Operation base home and garage. First appearance Unit 1 tabloid comic, July 1985. Height 5'2". So he's a small superhero. And he looks like he's a bit, chunky, we'll say. Yeah, he is. Weight 250 pounds. Okay. Age 28, sex male. History. Henry, close friend to Spike, started his own business as a plumber. This led to experimentation with pumps and related items for his group Puke Unit. His low pumps. Superhero group using pumps for equipment. Just think about that. I'm not sure how that works either. His low budget just fits the needs of his sideline superhero hobby. Weapons. 2 twin tanks filled with a food mixture of hardening fluid. When released from his wrist action guns, they quickly solidify around their victim. So that's his puke, I guess. Or an approximation of it. So they were going to release that as a superhero comic, I guess. Puke Unit. But I don't know if it ever came out. I have my doubts. But anyway, this is Ground Zero. I thought maybe you'd like a light-hearted video to look at the other side of the coin, because I'm always showing you the really quality comics from the Black and White Explosion. And I'm always telling you how people were complaining about lower quality product, but I hadn't shown you anything yet, right? But again, I find it charming, and it's a curio. It's definitely a curio. And these guys put together a nice little fun, amateur fanzine and comic. So I hope you enjoyed this look at it. I'm really want to hear about your comments. Like, I'm really curious what you're gonna say below, and just leave them in the comment section. And I guess that's all for today. So again, hope you enjoyed that recording, everybody, and I'll see you all again in another video. And don't forget to mention to watch. Don't forget to watch Dimension Z, the video I posted before this, because if you want to, but I mean, I'm recommending it because that comic is incredible. It is such a good comic book. The story, the artwork, great stuff. And this kind of, just another thing. I've kind of said this already, but just to clarify, when I go through, like, I get most of my comics from the 3 for $1 bins at my local comic store. And they have amazing sales there. They have like a sale every year, at least one every year. Usually, you know, well, I don't need to go into all the details, but anyway, they have an amazing sale, and I go there in the morning at the comic store, and I stay there all day. I just go through those bins, and I just leave, when they're about to close, and they say to me, "You've been here all day, really?" And I said, "Yes, I have," because I'm looking for treasures in those 3 for $1 bins. And what I'm looking for is, comics that look fun, that look interesting, that look like something I want to read, because I read everything I buy. So I'm looking for quality stuff, that's obscure, non-superhero stuff, almost always non-superhero stuff, although I'll make exceptions for, like, stuff that just looks really amateur like this, because I find this fun as well to see what people came up with, the less polished stuff as well. So I look for this kind of stuff as well as the quality stuff is what I'm getting at, because I find it entertaining. And I also love humor books. I love anything with humor in it, either if it's intentional or unintentional. Especially intentional, though. But yeah, so that's what I look for, and that's what I'm talking about on this channel, those type of comic books. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon in another video, everybody. Thank you for watching.